Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. We're in here to learn about group selling for business owners. My name is Mark Dolfini of Strategic Boardroom. It's very good to see you. Sorry, all of a sudden I started getting a bunch of pop-ups on my screen. I don't know where they're coming. Hold on, could you guys hear me? Oh, there we go. Okay. I don't know why my mic was muted. Man, all sorts of goofy stuff happened all at once. Welcome. Let's try this again. Welcome. My name is Mark Dolfini of Strategic Boardroom, and you are here to learn about group selling or selling to a crowd, selling to people where there's more than one buying decision being made in the group. It's very good to see you. I've got people joining me from YouTube, and those of you who are here who signed up through Eventbrite, welcome. I have a couple of people on LinkedIn and a few people on Facebook. So it's really good to have you all here. Please let me know who you are and what line of work that you're in. And that way I can make it maybe a little bit more relevant to you. Would love to do that for you. But please let me know again and I want to make this, again, situational for you. And I want to make this really clear about what group selling is. And if it's something like, man, I just could never think about getting up in front of people and selling to them, or it feels really icky if I was going to do something along those lines. Selling, it's important that you make the distinction of selling one to one versus selling one to many. And there are real benefits to selling, to doing both, right? And there's certainly pros and cons to selling one to one versus selling one to many. Selling one to one, that I do enjoy selling one to one, but I will say there are definite pros because it can be more intimate, meaning you really get to know the person on the other side of the table, or where you're standing literally, you're sitting shoulder to shoulder or knee to knee with someone. You definitely get to know them a lot better, and I like that aspect of it. You can also make the selling a little bit more tailored to the situation, and I'm pretty good at thinking on my feet and having in conversation with people, not necessarily trying to sell them something that they need, but if they give me a little bit of pushback on something, I'll know immediately and I can adjust. Or use that as a disqualifier to say, you know what, I don't really think I'm the best fit. I would rather someone be a happy customer of someone else's than a dissatisfied customer of mine. And that is something that you can get to know pretty quickly in a one-to-one individual selling conversation. And it's also excellent for high ticket. Not that you can't sell high ticket with selling one to many, but it is really good for selling high ticket items, and that's where a lot of my experience comes in. When you're selling one to many, it I mean the cons of selling one to one is it takes a lot of time, right? Whereas selling one to many, it's a lot more effective and efficient, and it's very costly because selling one to one takes so much time. It's much more costly, not just in time but also in dollars. And there's also limited reach. You're only reaching the other person or people on the other side of the table. Now, when you are making the one distinction I want to make between selling one to one versus selling one to many, we're talking about the number of buying decisions. The number of buying decisions. So what do I mean? So you might be having a conversation with someone who is looking to buy an insurance policy. Okay? You might be having that conversation with a man and his spouse. You might be having that same conversation with a man, a spouse, and his adult children. It's still one buying decision, but they collectively are making that one buying decision. You could be talking to a team or a board of directors, but it's still one buying decision. The difference when you're selling one to many is when there's multiple buying decisions. That way, let's say for argument's sake that you're selling to, again, there's three people there, and you've got husband, wife, and an adult child, and maybe each one of them is looking for a policy individually. That would be multiple. That would be your selling to a crowd, right? It's multiple buying decisions. So these are the sorts of, or in this particular case, if you're selling a timeshare or you're selling boats, whatever, like that's the difference between selling one to one versus selling one to many. So one where there's just one buying decision, where there's one purchase to be made, and there's when the other we're selling one to many is when there's multiple decisions for that same purchase. Okay, for multiple different purchases. Okay, that's what we're talking about. So when you're looking at selling one to one versus selling one to many, that whole conversation goes into what I refer to as buying units. And understanding your number of buying units is really, really important for you to know right out of the gate. Because if you don't understand the buying units, so in this particular case, and I hate to break it down like this just because it sounds so bad, it sounds so impersonal, but when you're looking at the number of buying units, let's say for argument's sake that I was selling an insurance policy and I'm having this conversation, or let's say I'm selling boats. I'm not going to generally sell a boat to a husband and then another one for the wife. Generally, they're going to make that decision together. They're not going to each individually buy a boat, right? Typically, or an RV. That would be one buying unit. So husband and wife comes in. They're one buying unit. Or what if husband and wife come in and their adult child comes in? Now, there could be two buying units there. The husband and wife could represent one buying unit, and the adult child could be representing another buying unit, potentially, right? So that's why I'm saying when you're looking at the type of sale, when you're looking at one-to-many, selling one-to-many, which is what we're talking about today, is when you have multiple buying units in a crowd, and that's generally what you want to do. So you want to fill that crowd with as many people as possible. Okay, is that making sense? So if you are just joining us, we got a bunch of people who just hopped on from YouTube. It's good to see you. Please let me know where you're from and what line of business that you're in. So one of the reasons why I see why people hate selling is they feel like they have to convince someone to do something that they don't want to do. Does that resonate with any of you guys? Like, oh, I hate feeling like I have to convince people to buy something. I hate feeling like I'm being pushy. Yeah, I hate that too. And I'm actually pretty good at selling, but I'm not selling by holding someone's head underwater until they say yes. That is not selling. That's being a bully, okay? Does anybody know those like high pressure people, they just don't take no for an answer, and I'm sorry, that does not, to me in my mind, that's not effective selling. That's again that's being a bully. So, let's look at another reason why people hate selling, and this really doesn't have anything to do with the individual. It has everything to do with you. It has everything to do with, why do you hate asking people for money? Right. Oh my gosh, I hate asking people for feeling for money, or they feel like they're being salesy. They feel like they're being this guy, right? Hey, well, being all slick. No one likes feeling like this guy. Even this guy doesn't like feeling like this guy, unless he just really is truly a sociopath and does not care about anything but the numbers. Okay. So I feel bad for this guy. I actually don't know who he is. I'm sure he's a lovely human being. But the point is, you're coming across that real slick sales guy, and that is not at all what is effective. So we're gonna try a slightly different approach, and it's a strategic approach of selling from stage, and it's about building trust with your audience, and building massive trust with your audience, because unless and until you're able to build trust with them, they're not going to buy from you. They may go, oh yeah, that was a good presentation, thanks so much, that was helpful, but they're not going to buy from you. Okay, so this is about building trust. So let's get into the agenda. Again, if you have questions along the way, please type them into the chat. And there's just letting you know on LinkedIn, sometimes when you post those, it takes a little bit for them to come through. So I've got quite a few people on LinkedIn that have joined. So it's good to see you all. And again, if you're just joining me, please let me know where you're at and what line of work that you're in, because we're talking about selling to a group, selling to a crowd. And this is something that I had worked with, and I will tell you, anybody can get good at this. If I can get good at this, anybody can. I worked with a guy for about 4 or 5 years, and I stayed in his mentorship program for I think a total of 7 years, and he was really, really helpful for me. And but I will tell you that this is a perishable skill, so you do need to review this and do this often enough where you will come back to this and say, okay, cool, like I know what I'm doing and I know how to actually do this. So I'm not going to lay out the framework exactly for your webinar or your speaking from stage. That's something completely different. But I will lay out some of the strategies that you need to have in place. So I'm just letting you know this is some of it's going to be tactical, but I need to give you some framework before we get into the tactics. That could probably be a whole other afternoon in terms of how to specifically put the granular steps in place. I did do a little bit of that then at the end. So if and I'm also going to show you just really quick, I'm going to mention this now, for those of you who are interested in actually doing this better, or even just growing your business, scaling your business through what I'm going to refer to here as the Viper framework. If you're interested in working together a little bit, whether that's just as a group, from a group perspective, or one-to-one perspective, I'll show you how we can do that at the end. All right, so let's get into the agenda. So we're going to be talking about systems, and then we're going to be talking about psychology. There's both systems component to business and psychology. So we're going to be unpacking both of those things. We're also going to be talking about the offer. The offer is critical, because if you have a terrible offer, no, it doesn't matter how good your presentation is. It doesn't matter how much they trust you. If your offer sucks, people are not going to buy it. So it's really important that you be really intentional about the offer and make the offer so good that people are going to feel stupid for saying no. Like, the offer has to be that good. It has to be a Godfather offer, an offer they just can't refuse. And then we're going to get into creating the presentation. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to get into the actual delivery and then some resources at the end. So when we're talking about the systems, or the systems approach, everything around the systems approach is in this book, the Time Wealthy Advantage. This book over my shoulder. I actually published this last year in May, and it's a good book. Like, I get paid several $1,000s an hour sometimes for doing what I do as a strategist, and everything that I know about the systems component I put in that book. So if you would like the cheat code and you want to buy this book, I'm not here to promote it. I'm just letting you know this is where you get into the real granular details of everything around the Viper method. You can get that on Amazon. If you would like, if you're in the United States and you'd like a signed copy, you can go to strategicboardroom.com. I forgot to put my banner up again. I keep doing that. If you want to go to strategicboardroom.com, you can order it directly off of the main page. Just go to that and you can buy it there. All right, so let's get to the Viper framework. The Viper framework is vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. And I'm not going to unpack all of this because it's really kind of outside the scope of talking from stage. But if you are looking to build a business from top down using a strategic perspective, this framework works in any business. It's worked really well in service-based businesses. If you've got restaurants, coffee shops, contracting type businesses, works really well with, but I have worked with fractional CEOs, fractional CFOs, fractional CMOs, so chief financial officers, chief marketing officers. I've worked with a host of different types of businesses, and this framework has worked in dozens of industries. So just letting you know, if you'd like to get really clear on that, you can use this Viper framework. So let's get to the vision piece, which is the V in the Viper method. Vision has two components. It's got personal vision and it's got business vision. And you need both of these, but you have to look at personal vision first, because personal vision is like, okay, great. Where do you want to go? Where is it you want to go in life? So I've got, Joe, where do you want to go? Jerry, where do you want to go? Michelle, where do you want to go in life? If your life wasn't defined by income generation, if your job description, Melissa, if your job description wasn't also a life description, think about that. And the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because if you don't think about your personal vision and you only think about your business vision becomes your personal vision. And that's how you created a job for yourself. Even if you're making a lot of money, it's a high-paying job, and it's one you can't get away from. So then once we consider that personal vision, then you bring the business vision into place, which, like, okay, cool, that's what you want for your personal vision. Great. Now, how are we going to get there? And that's what the personal vision does. So I just want you to think about that from that perspective, that if you never ever give your personal vision any thought, then you're always going to be focusing on your business. And I'm just telling you, that sucks. That's an empty well that just never gets filled in. So the danger in creating a business vision without ever giving any thought to a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. So we're going to move on from this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on personal vision, but just even some basic things, like what are some things that you would look forward to if you didn't have to worry about your income generation. So think about that. We're going to move on from there and talk about the 3 C's of business vision. But please don't, just because I'm only spending a couple minutes on that, please does not mean that they're not relevant. In fact, in my school community, the first 13 days are spent around personal vision. And granted, it's a full 90-day package, but the reason for that is because it's foundational to everything we do. The businesses exist for us. The businesses exist to serve us, not the other way around. So just keep that in mind. These 3 C's of business vision. And again, you might be thinking, well, what does this have to do with speaking from stage? It has everything to do with speaking from stage because it has everything to do with selling and has everything to do with defining the DNA of your company. And anytime I get hired and people come to me and they say, man, we've got trouble bringing in leads, we've got trouble keeping in customers, we got a lot of churn. Churn is when you have someone coming in and leaving almost as fast. So you always have some churn, but churn is like when your customers go away, then you need to replace that customer with someone new. That's what churn is. So when they come in, how long do they actually stay? If your churn is higher than the people that are the number of people that are coming in, then your growth, or if your churn is higher than the number of leads you have coming in, then you have negative growth, right? You're not growing. You're actually shrinking. So that's why you always want your leads to come in advance of your churn. So you always want your leads to be higher than your churn. And this is something, if someone's coming to me like they've got all sorts of turnover, they've got lots of churn, they are not profitable, they've got bad company culture, anything related to any of these just negative things that are going on in business, it's almost always because these 3 things are not well defined. And those 3 things are core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Core purpose, core values, and client avatar. So I want you to think about it. We're going to get into this a little bit. I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but the core purpose is really important for you to think about fundamentally, about what business are you specifically in and what problems do you specifically solve. If you're not really clear about what core purpose is and you're not really specific in your answers, if you're not really specific in your answers, the problem is people are not really going to know what it is that you're up on stage selling. Again, I'm a strategist. Many people confuse me for coaching. You're like, oh, you're a business coach. Yeah, I use the tools as a business coach. I look and sound like a business coach. But trust and know, when you work with a strategist versus working with a coach, you get to know the difference pretty fast. And if you've never worked with a coach, people who've worked with me first and then worked with a coach later, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize how good I had it. And it's not because I'm amazing. I mean, I'm really good at what I do, but it's because they think I'm a coach. And then when they actually hire a coach, they realize, oh, that guy doesn't have the same tools in the toolbox as Mark does. And it's because I'm a strategist, and strategists have different tools in their toolbox. I have defined myself in that core purpose very differently, right? And you might be thinking, what is the difference? Well, perfect example is that a lot of times a coach will help you perform better given a set of tools that you already have. That's what a good coach is for. That they recognize that what's already in you is good enough and that you probably have all the tools that you need. A strategist will oftentimes add to those tools or help develop additional tools. Coaches don't generally do that. Not saying there's no coaches that will do that, but coaches generally aren't going to be training. They don't add to the requisite sphere of knowledge to that individual. A lot of times they won't do that. That's not what they're for. Strategists will add additional tools to the toolbox because if they see a weakness, they're going to say, hey, this is something you need to beef up. Let's beef this up. And then if it's something that you're just not skilled at doing, then we're going to turn it over to someone else, hiring in someone else, right? So that's a big difference between a strategist and a coach. And this is important for you to recognize why you are doing the thing that you're doing. Why would the world, again, how are you making a difference in the world? If you're not really clear on that, it's not going to get magically more clear by the time it leaves your lips to the person's ears. So you have to be really clear and a little obnoxious about what it is that you do. Now, for those of you who are on the call and you're saying, well, Mark, I do a lot of different things. Okay. Well, like what? Well, I do this thing and I do that thing. And, we're a marketing agency and we do all these different things. Okay, fine. I respect that. And lots of businesses do lots of different things. As a strategist, I work in the 4 core functions of business: lead gen, sales, operations, accounting. But I stay in those 4 areas. Think of it like a mechanic. Does a mechanic only replace headlights? No, they will replace headlights. Does a mechanic only do brake jobs? Well, I mean, no, they don't only do brake jobs. They do headlights and brake jobs and mufflers, They might replace tires. They might work on your engine. They might do all sorts of different things, right? Do they work on your transmission? Probably not, because that's a specialty thing. They might tell you to go somewhere else for that. So this is where you start to recognize what you're really good at. Like you're the mechanic that works specifically on passenger rated vehicles. Could you work on my dump truck? No, I don't work on heavy trucks. Would you work on my lawnmower? No, I don't work on those types of engines. Okay, great. So now you're starting to put those boundaries in place, and that is why it's really important to have that core purpose defined. So let's talk about core values. Core values, again, we're talking about selling to a crowd and getting these things really clear in your mind up front before you step in front of someone on a webinar, in front of a camera, or on stage, and you really don't know what you're about in terms of your core purpose. It's going to show. It's also going to show if you're not clear in your core values. Your core values is what matters to you about this business, and how would the world be worse off if you went out of business? Think about it from that perspective, because your core values, the core values of your company, are a direct representation of your personal core values, because your business is just an extension of you. Stands to reason. So if you have a set of core values that are, around different things that are important to you in life, and you'd say, well, how do I know if something's a core value? That's a fair question. We walk around with a lot of different values in our lives, right? We have lots of different values, but only a handful of them are core values. So I'll give you an example. I value peanut M&Ms. I value Oreos, okay? But am I going to go to war over Oreos? Probably not. Okay. Someone breaks into my office and says, give me your Oreos. I actually ate the last sleeve of them last night. But if someone broke in and said, give me all your Oreos, I'm not going to go to war over my Oreos. But if someone breaks into my house and threatens my family, I'm going to meet them with war. Right? You see, it's the thing, what the real line in the sand is, what are you willing to take action on? What is a value that is so valuable to you that you're willing to take action on? That is a real difference. That is how you know something is a core value. So for example, how many of you out there have ever had a friend, right? You can put in the comments if you want. Just say, yeah, sadly, or yep, that's actually happened. How many of you out there have had a friend? Sometimes it's a family member, sometimes it's a love interest, where they were heading down a path that you weren't willing to follow them, whatever path that was. And you were like, hey, listen, brother, I love you, man, but I'm not going down that path. You're heading down a path I can't follow. Has anybody ever had that happen? In that violation, there was some sort of a violation of a core value for you. That's how you know something is a core value, when you're willing to take action on something, when you're willing to take a stand on something. So that maybe they were heading down a path that was a violation of integrity. Maybe there was someone's heading down a path that was a violation of honesty, or whatever it was, or just decency, whatever violation that was for you. That's how you know it was a violation of a core value. So start to think about these things and start to actually define them. Start to put them on paper. That way, again, you can think about these from the excesses of your life, the excessively bad, the excessively good, and you can start to say, okay, well, if that was a violation, that was horrible. I'm never going through that again because of this. I mean, it could have been a horrible boss. Well, what was horrible about him? What was the violation of a core value for you? Like, man, I don't know. The way they treated me was just horrible. Okay, so for you, it might be justice, right? It might be friendliness. It might be kindness, whatever that is. Or maybe it was just the way that they talked to you, right? So that is important. Or what is an event in your life that if you could replicate, that you would? That's an important consideration for you. So think about these different things in terms of core values. So now that you're thinking about your core values, you've got your personal core values, you start to define these. And why are these important? Because in the context of your business and when you're selling from stage, it shows. It shows up in the way you speak. And I'm telling you, there's no faking that. There's people who come on this call, they stayed for a few minutes and they left. You know why? Because I was either too boring, which I respect that. Sometimes I get a little bit wordy, but there's other times where people are like, man, I hate that guy. I don't want anything but to do with him, right? Whatever it is, there's a misalignment of core values, and that's okay. Let them go be trained by someone else. It's totally fine. But the core values is what helps determine company culture, and company brand are inextricably linked. So when you're bringing them into the sale, You want to know that you're bringing in people who are already aligned with your core values. So we talked core purpose, we talked core values. Now let's talk about the person that's in the part of the equation that you're trying to attract, and that's the client avatar. So who specifically and ideally do you want to serve? And it's really important that you think about these people in the context of their geographics, their demographics, and the psychographics. The geographics is basically, again, where are they? Where do they live? Who, what part of the world do they live, or even in the sectors that they live in terms of the type of businesses that they're in. The demographics is who they are. Are they married? Are they single? Are they old? Are they young? Are they wealthy? Are they not wealthy? Are they educated? Are they not educated? Whatever. Think of their demographics, and then think of their psychographics. Psychographics is how they think and how they buy. How they think and how they buy. So when you're looking at psychographics, I want you to think of the phrase ALIA, A-L-I-A. And when you're looking at ALIA, A-L-I-A is their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, and their aspirations and goals. I'll let you jot those down. So their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, and their aspirations or goals. So when you're looking at these different things here, okay, sorry, keep getting some pop-ups here. All right, there we go. All right, sorry, someone was messaging me. All right, so the attitudes, so what you want to be thinking of is, as the people who are sitting in the audience, you should probably already know their attitudes towards your product or service. It would be really helpful for you to know. So let's say, for argument's sake, that you're an attorney. Now, most attorneys do not have, like the industry in general, most people don't like attorneys. They may like their attorney, but they don't like the legal field, right? Stands to reason. I get it, right? People get hit with lawsuits and all sorts of different things. So you may, if you're an attorney and you're trying to sell to that crowd, you may say, how many in here just love to hate attorneys, right? So you can kind of get in front of them because you already know their attitudes. Does that make sense? Right? Does that make sense? Or what is their attitude towards paying additional taxes that they don't need to? Okay, how many here love paying taxes? And if this is a high net worth group, they would like, oh my gosh, no one likes paying taxes, right? So that's why you can help talk to them in a way that's resonating with them. What about their lifestyle? What kind of lifestyle do they have? Are they young and jet setting, or are they older and retired? What are their interests? Do they like American football? Do they like European football? Do they like NASCAR, or do they like Formula One? And these interests are really important, but nothing is probably as important as their aspirations and goals. If you know what they aspire to, if you know what their goals are, you can help them. And this is the reason why when I talk to a lot of business owners, they really want to help increase their sales. Many of them are trying to grow. Many of them are trying to sell more. Many of them are trying to be more profitable. And when I start talking to them in that language, I mean, those are universal things that I can pretty much start talking about and saying, hey, are you a business owner and you struggle with profitability? That anytime you sell and you might have a big sale, you get a big infusion in cash and you turn around and it's gone? Does anybody can relate to that? Does anybody struggle with lots of turnover in their business with employees that they're hiring and they just don't seem to care as much as you do? For those people who are business owners that go, oh my gosh, this guy, is he living in my house? Like, how does he know? Yeah, because I know those struggles. I have not only researched those struggles, I have lived those struggles. So that's why it's important for you to understand, like, hey, are you trying to grow your business? Are you trying to grow out of your business? Do you want to sell your business at some point? Are you wanting to just spend less time in your business? Do you want to actually enjoy the profitability and not spend all this time managing people who don't seem to care as much about your business as you do, right? That makes it more relevant to them. So this is why you need to know their goals and aspirations. So if anything, you need to research and spend a lot of time researching and getting to know your avatar really, really well. So those are the 3 C's of business vision. Again, if you guys have any questions along the way, please feel free to ask them as they come up. So let's talk about a little bit around core purpose. Core purpose is going to be very directly related and correlated to what it is that you sell. And that is going to be related to your Godfather offer. Your Godfather offer is going to be like, again, people are going to feel like an idiot to say no to whatever it is that you're offering. So that core purpose ties directly into what it is that you're selling. Again, think about the mechanic. Think about the guy that is doing that is doing passenger rated vehicles and the type of offer that he can do. Hey, let's say it's springtime and you're in the Pacific Northwest or in New England, and your car has been just banged around all winter long, and you're ready for a tune-up, and you're ready for some tires, and you're ready for an alignment because the roads are just crap. Okay, so you could put something together that's an offer that's specific to your avatar. So that's why all the three of these things have to be in alignment. So let's look at core values. Core values is based around what you say and how you say it. And it's really important because I tend to attract, and not necessarily by design, but I tend to attract married couples. I also tend to attract married couples who tend to be Christian, right? But it's not that I won't work with them, but if they're not, but if they are, they tend to have faith of some point, and again, faith in God. And for me, that's kind of important because I don't want to not like that faith is important to me. So I don't want to start talking about that to someone like, oh, like, well, don't talk to me about that. I'm like, dude, I don't know that you're going to be the best fit for me because God's just part of my conversation, right? So that's why, again, when you bring that up around it's what you're saying and how you say it. Yeah, I'm not talking about punching people in the mouth with Jesus. I'm saying be authentic to who you are. And that is going to come as a direct result of your core values. And then your client avatar is who you're saying it to specifically. That's the person that's in the crowd. All right, so that's kind of the systems part. Again, I'm going to have to leave it truncated. I did not get to the rest of the Viper framework. There's still infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. I did not talk about any of that stuff. That is for a completely different webinar. But if you are interested in that, you can get in the book, or we can talk about how to get into that later. So the psychology side of the business is really, really important. So it's really important for you to think about the psychology and not just what's going on in your business, but also what's going on in you and in the buying psychology and in the mind of the client avatar. So in terms of psychology, you're looking at personal and individual psychology, and you're looking at business and organizational psychology. So it was interesting. Right now, I'm in a PhD program for organizational psychology. And originally I had signed up for personal psychology. And I was like, oh, I don't really know that this fits for what I want to do, being in personal and being in, an individual psychology. Because I have no interest in being a therapist or anything like that. But really the organizational psychology side was really, really interesting to me. But you cannot ignore the individual and personal side of psychology, because I believe what I've been seeing is, especially at the small business level, is that the individual and personal psychology adds up to the business and organizational psychology in a very real way, in a very tangible way. So when you're looking at your personal psychology, you're thinking about things like related to your own individual self-worth or your own individual self-management and even your limiting beliefs and self-sabotaging behaviors. So those are the things that we're talking about. And again, if you're bringing a bad relationship with money into your organization, the business doesn't magically just make it all better. I mean, I've seen people make a lot of money every single month, 6 and 7, sometimes 8 figures a month, and they spend it just as fast as they make it, like on literal nonsense. So I get it, I understand it, but there's no ignoring this. And people go, well, yeah, it's really, let me make $100,000 a month and I'll be fine. Unfortunately, they spend, because of their individual and personal psychology, because they have not worked on that with themselves. Unfortunately, that becomes a real problem. So let's look at the business psychology when you're looking at it from an external and internal perspective. By the way, no judgment on that personal, that personal relationship with money thing. I absolutely had those same problems and had absolutely had those same issues when I was looking at the struggle that was going on with me and my business. I'm like, yeah, well, once I make $100,000 a month or anything like that, I'll be totally fine. And those milestones would come and go, and I would still be struggling just as much as I was before. It was just a different amount of different amount of numbers. So when you're looking at business psychology, let's focus on that for just a hot second. Business psychology, you're looking at, again, internal psychology and external psychology. The internal psychology is related to management and leadership. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that right now. That's for a different session. But the external psychology, you look at like vendor psychology, which is related to negotiations, even things like politics, external politics that go on, like, like the political landscape right now. I'm not talking office politics. I'm talking like the politics that goes on outside the organization. And that is a complete nightmare right now in the United States. But realistically, I want to spend a few minutes on buying psychology. And it's really understanding that buying psychology, because again, remember what I said in the beginning, your job is to build build massive trust with your audience. And I'm going to do that in a couple of different ways. We're going to talk about the 15 reasons why people buy, and we're going to talk about the 7 principles of persuasion. When it comes to the 7 principles or 7 reasons why people buy, I'm going to put all these up. In fact, I'm going to take myself down so you guys can take a quick screenshot. And by the way, for anybody who has signed up for this on Eventbrite, you will get a replay sent to you automatically. I get that question quite often, so I just want you guys to know that. Okay, so I had to get some water in there. All right, so here, the reason I've got this up on the screen is the 15 reasons why people are going to want to buy. And this is true of everyone in your audience. So when you're looking at these things, you're looking at why people are going to want to buy, because they want to make money. They want to save money. They want to save time, avoid effort. They want to escape emotional pain, sometimes physical pain, sometimes spiritual pain. They want more comfort in their lives. They want better health. And keep in mind, better health could also be in the form of less stress. They will buy because they want to gain praise. They want to feel more love. They want to increase their status with their tribe. They will buy for truth. And pay attention to this. They will buy for truth, especially if they have felt lied to in the past. So if you can explain to them, hey, if you've tried this in the past and didn't get the results you wanted, unfortunately, you may have been lied to. They'll buy for growth, especially, again, growth in their knowledge, growth in their faith, growth in their wellness. Growth is a big deal for a lot of people. People buy for novelty just because something is new, because they need the latest iPhone 21 or whatever iteration is out there. They will buy for certainty or more perceived control. And they will buy to be in contribution to others. Okay, so what you're going to do here, you got a little bit of homework. And I will tell you that this is probably one of the best things that you can do for yourself when you're really trying to figure out if, in terms of the crowd, in terms of how you want to sell to them. So what I want you to do, you can get 15 pieces of paper if you want, or however many. But what I'd like you to do, I would say, at least 6 or 7 pieces of paper where you can write down on the top of the paper and then maybe halfway down, right? So you're going to do this however you want. Let's say it's 15 pieces of paper. And on the top of that piece of paper, you're going to write make money. And I want you to come up with all the reasons, directly and indirectly, how you and your product or service helps them make money. How do you directly or indirectly help them make money? And I want you to come up with as many reasons as possible. And realistically, you should come up with at least 10. You say, well, I don't know. I don't really help people make money. I said directly or indirectly. Let's say that you mow lawns. Do you directly or indirectly help people make money? I can come up with an easy answer. If you were mowing a lawn for a doctor or a surgeon who makes $800 an hour while they're performing surgery, and it takes you an hour and a half to mow their lawn, you just made them $1,200 because they can focus on doing surgery while you're mowing their lawn. Make sense? So I'm talking about directly or indirectly. Yes, get creative with these answers, because the more creative you can be, it's giving them more reasons in terms of why they're going to want to buy from you. And I want you to do that now. I don't want you trying to come up with these reasons on the fly from the stage, because when you've done this in advance, it's significantly easier for you to remind yourself, oh yeah, that is something that I can help people with. So this is what you're going to do. Do this with all 15 reasons why people buy. Again, directly or indirectly, how do you bring people more comfort? Directly or indirectly, how do you get people better health, right? It could be less stress, whatever. How do you bring people truth? How do you deliver truth to them, directly or indirectly? This is where I want you to start to think about all the different ways that you can do this, okay? So please do this, because this is also, once you have your client, you can't really do this unless you have your client avatar really figured out. And you can't really do this if you don't have your core purpose figured out. Because when we're coming up with the offer, this will kind of help bring you to that offer if you're not really sure what you're going to bring to them. But this is going to be really helpful for you down the road. Okay? So please use this as a piece of homework because this is going to really help you understand your avatar much further, a much deeper level. When you're looking at the 7 principles of persuasion, this helps you really understand buying psychology. And this is going to be more important during the creation and the delivery of the presentation. But I want to show you this now because it's foundational to selling effectively. So when you're looking at the 7 principles of persuasion, this was something that had been put out there by Robert Cialdini. He's written several books. But this comes down to reciprocity, commitment and consistency, social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity. The last one is related to being familial, and that's really kind of like based on affinity. So I'm not going to get into all these individual things, but I'll just do a quick description of them. Reciprocity is if I give you something of value, you're going to want to give something of value back to me. That's reciprocity. And that's universal. If someone does you a solid, you almost feel compelled to do someone else a solid back. But the thing is, this is about delivering lots of value. So again, how can you deliver a lot of value from stage rather than just saying, well, let me show you. I'm going to mention this later, but there's a lot of presenters that will show you a lot of what to do, but not how to do it. So that drives me absolutely bananas. I want to give people value that is showing them not just what the thing is, but also how to implement it. I could have just put the 15 reasons why people buy up on the screen and say, this is the reason that they're going to buy, but I'm not going to tell you what to do with it. And that, I'm sorry, man. I just think that's bad form. I think if you're going to bring real value to people, bring real value. So again, you've got, the 3 C's of business vision: core purpose, core values, client avatar. Unless or until you actually define those things, and I don't know where you guys are at from 1 to 10 on each of those, but if you don't have if you're not at least a 7 across the board on all of them, and they're not written down, and I would tell you that they can't be anything more than a 5 unless they're written down, I don't know that I can help you. So this is why I'm saying, if someone's teaching a lot of what to do but not how to do it, I just think it's bad form. I really I don't know how much I would trust that individual. I've seen that a lot, and I've seen it a lot through the years. And when I was in the real estate coaching world, I saw a lot of people doing that from stage, and I just never felt right about that. I always was one that would rather teach people, and my sales would suffer a little bit rather than leaving people to just so they could buy my crap. I never felt right about that. The next one is commitment and consistency. So you got to understand that people will make micro commitments, and because consistency is viewed as a positive trait among us humans, if we make a small commitment, it's a lot easier for us to make a bigger commitment later on because it'll help us stay consistent. So that is a big deal. So those of you who signed up, you gave me your email, you're like, okay, well, I gave me an email. And then it's like, well, let's go for this session for an hour, right? Well, probably a little bit longer than an hour. But the point is, you're making these micro commitments, and then to stay consistent along the way, you will keep making bigger and bigger commitments. So that's exactly how this works in terms of persuasion. Again, I'm telling you this, like I put something together for free. And again, trust and know, this is part of lead generation for me. I'm not saying that to be weird. I'm saying it because it's true. So this is just letting you know, this is something that actually is something for you to know, is like, how can you get people to make micro commitments along the way and then keep them consistent as you ask them to make larger and larger commitments later on. That's how this works. Social proof is really important when you see what others are doing in the crowd. And that is when you start talking about testimonials, about what you have done for others, or even what you have done for yourself. So let's say that the people in the crowd, they just have a real low feeling of self-worth. Like, look, man, I used to be that guy, and I legit was. Like, I had a bad relationship with money and a bad relationship with time, and it was all related to my bad relationship with myself. And that was really hard for me to get past. And because of that, once I did get past that, it's not like the money problem just magically disappeared, but slowly over time, because I kept working on myself and my self-worth, it did make a bigger difference down the road. So that's how social proof works, is letting people know that you are like them, which goes to the next one, which is liking. Liking, most people think it's like, oh yeah, I like that guy, I like that gal. That's not what this is at all, although it does help. Some people can think you're an absolute jerk, but if they feel like they're like you, they'll still buy from you. What I'm talking about liking is are not do they like me, but are they like me? That's far more important than do they like you, because you might be really likable, but they're not going to buy from you. But if they feel like that person gets me, then they'll likely buy from you. And that's what's important, is to make people realize how much you are like them. If I came up on stage in front of a group of people who don't necessarily value education, and let's pretend I've gone through my PhD program and I go up there and I am Dr. Mark Dolfini and you will call me doctor, I probably just shot myself in the foot with that entire crowd. Okay. Now, on the other hand, let's say I am getting in front of a group of people who are executives and, you know, people who would value that, then me saying I am Dr. So-and-so might make a bigger difference, right? So it's really important that they feel like that is someone who is like them and not out of touch with them. Authority is a big deal too. So authority, where again, I have written 8 different books, that gives me some authority in the mind of most people. It's like, oh, he's got some authority. Root word author. Now you can say, well, I've done this, I have done these things. These are the sorts of things that give me authority over this. This is how I have the authority to speak about these things. And sometimes credentials will help with that as well. Scarcity, it has to be real scarcity. And I will tell you that scarcity can be really tricky, and it can seem very contrived, where it's like, oh, I've only got 10 of these. I'm like, dude, you have an internet like, you have an internet product. You don't have just 10 of these. Like, you could literally sell 1 million of them, right? It's not going to make that big of a difference. But if it's real scarcity, we say, hey, look, like, for example, my time is legitimately scarce. Everyone's time is legitimately scarce. So if you were going to say, let's say that you were selling a one-to-one coaching program, and you could say, hey, look, for the first 5 people who buy into my one-to-one coaching program, let's say it's $10,000, but that I can only do for the first 5. Anybody after that, I have to charge $20,000, and I'm limiting myself to 15 in total. Okay, that's legit scarcity, because it's real. That's someone goes, oh yeah, that's legit. Have you ever seen that commercial that says, hey, the first 10 callers get this thing, and the commercial runs for 6 months, and you're like, really, you haven't had 10 callers yet? Like, come on, man. Well, like the first 10 callers get this free thing, and like, they don't get, it's like after 6 months, they still don't have it. All right. So that's what I'm saying. It's got to be real scarcity. It can't be manufactured. Otherwise it's going to blow up on you. And the things familial, that is where you have an affinity. So in other words, think like, if you are speaking in the Midwest and you grew up in the Midwest, you could talk about Midwestern things. Make sense? If let's say, for argument's sake, if I grew up in the South and I was going to talk about grits, right? That might be something that a Southern crowd might resonate with. If I grew up in the Midwest and I start talking about biscuits and gravy, that's not something that would resonate in New England. If I was in St. Louis and started talking about deep fried ravioli, that's something local to St. Louis. Does that make sense? So I want you to think about different things that are important to think about in different areas, and things where you can be familial. So all those things are very important when you're bringing these things up with a crowd. Okay, so let's keep rocking and rolling. We're almost all the way through this, so we're going to be talking about the offer. The offer is absolutely important when you're thinking about putting a presentation together, and you have to think about the offer first. If you think about the offer after you put the presentation together, you've completely shot yourself in the foot. Everything is constructed in reverse from the offer. So you're basically thinking about the offer in advance. So it's going to make you much easier to create content that aligns with the offer than trying to make the whole presentation, then put an offer together, and then go back and try to shoehorn stuff that's going to align with the offer. I'm just telling you, that's the wrong way to do it. Create the offer first. Think about the offer in advance. And I'm just going to tell you now, creating a good offer is not something that you can rush. You just can't throw it together and think that people are gonna be like, oh yeah, they're gonna take this because it's so good regardless. If you rush through the offer, your sales are going to suffer. So when you're putting together the Godfather offer steps, first and foremost, you want to consider your answers to the 15 reasons why people buy. Why are they doing this? And I also want you to think of the core purpose, the core values. Why are these people buying from you? How would the world be worse off if you were no longer in business? Why are they doing this? And then, of course, after you have considered the reasons why they're going to want to buy from you, then you're going to layer your offering. We'll talk about this here more in a second. And then you're going to create a value stack. So let's get into the specifics on this. When you consider the 15 reasons why people buy, I'm going to show you and demonstrate how this has worked for me. So when I've looked at the 15 reasons why people buy, and I want you to think about just around making money. So again, this is about considering the reasons why people buy, and I picked the one around making money. Okay, give me a second here. Okay, so now that I've figured out the 15 reasons why people buy, and I'm going to have them making money, and how I can help them make money directly or indirectly, I think I can help them make money by teaching them effective lead generation. I can teach them how to sell one-to-one, how to sell one-to-many. I can help them with their pricing strategy. I can help them with something known as A/B testing. I can help them to borrow as a business, and I can help them understand and learn all about their financial statements. Again, this keeps me, I'm like a mechanic, right? I can help them stay within those 4 areas of lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. If you were to ask me about tax law, I don't really have an opinion, because guess what? That's like the mechanic working on transmissions. I don't really do that kind of work. I don't really know anything about tax law. I know enough for me. I can give you an opinion maybe, but yours is different. That's why you need a CPA. You need a tax accountant. You need a tax attorney. If someone asks me about the legal or organizational structure, I can give you an opinion. But again, we're probably going to have to talk to an attorney about setting these things up, and also talking to an accountant to make sure that that structure is not going to totally screw you when it comes to your taxes. Okay? So again, this is the box that I stay in. I'm not trying to be all things to all people, but I am trying to be a lot of things to my avatar. Make sense? So once I understand these are the sorts of things that I can do to help them make money, now I'm going to layer my offering. Now, let's talk about what exactly is an offer. An offer is a grouping of products and or services which can benefit or have specific meaning to your client avatar. So the real key word in there is meaning. Meaning, what is it going to change for them? So if you buy a car that has 500 horsepower and it goes 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, that's a feature and that's a benefit. But the meaning is why they're really gonna buy. The meaning is, I feel like a really cool chick when I stomp on the gas and it lights up my neighborhood and I'm the fastest car on the block. Or I feel like a really cool dude when I rev the engine and it kind of pisses my neighbors off. Okay? That's the meaning. Or it makes my brother-in-law, totally feel a little envious when I have that pull up in that car. Okay? Whatever. That's the meaning. The meaning is why they're going to buy. The feature is the thing, right? It's the 500 horsepower. It's the fact that you have this whole array of books, or it's got 8 hours worth of video content. That's the feature. The benefit is so they'll learn this thing, or so it goes 0 to 60, or so it does whatever it's supposed to do. The meaning is the transformation. Okay? So that's why your offer of the grouping of products or services, and grouping is also a key word there, because it's not just, I'm not just selling you this bracelet. I'm selling you this bracelet and this pen and this pen and then this card, this gift card, and also this eraser. Okay. I don't know why I have all this stuff on my desk either, by the way, but that's what I'm saying. Like, all of that for one price is an offer versus just selling this thing. Does that make sense? Because once I just sell this thing, you go, well, I can buy another thing for a very similar price later. Why would I buy your thing? Make sense? So that's what an offer is. So when you're looking at making money, again, I'm not going to go through all of these individual things here, but lead generation, how to sell. Like, these are all the things that I can do around making money. Okay. So all these different things. I can do this with saving money. Okay. I've got all these different things around saving time. So this is all the stuff that I can do. Now, if I'm going to put all this together in creating a Godfather offer, this is really important. So this is around, again, thinking about how can I construct an offer that's going to help them in all those different areas. Is this making sense? So the Godfather offer, now we're going to create a value stack. Again, this is about creating trust. So how do you create trust with your audience? And that value stack is really, really important. So when you're creating that value stack, I'm going to show you a value stack here in just a little bit. But that value stack, again, this is where when you're putting all this together, this is where you're going to start putting this together in the presentation. That value stack is really important. I'll come back to that. So the 4 core functions of business, the lead generation is when you're putting this together. And again, we talked about the 4 core functions of business before, but it's lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. So when you're talking about the lead generation, this is about targeting your client avatar. This is when you know exactly who it is you want to work with, and it's much easier for you to direct your marketing towards. And these are the clients that bring you the most amount of drama with the least, or they bring you the most amount of money, with the least amount of drama. And it lets the world know that you're out there through a variety of marketing approaches. So it could be all sorts of things. It could be networking, direct response. It could be outbound lead generation, inbound lead generation, affiliate marketing, whatever. Okay. So lead generation lets people know that you're out there doing your thing. The sales component is really what closes the loop. So in this particular case, your selling one to many is the lead generation, but also at the end, when you're doing the ask, that's kind of the selling component to this. So really, it just depends on what you're like. It depends if you are also inviting people in to do this webinar sort of thing, or inviting people in for this free session, whatever you're doing, or maybe they're already raised their hand and say, I'm really interested in gutter covers. Can I sit into your next presentation? Yeah. And in that particular case, they know they're walking into a selling conversation. Selling conversation is what closes the loop. The operations function is what is the fulfillment piece, and the accounting piece is what handles the numbers. So that's the 4 core functions of business, and your customer's journey through your company happens in that order: lead gen, then sales, then operations, then accounting. So that's the important thing for you to just keep in mind. So one of the things that I do, and this is something that I really enjoy doing with Eventbrite, is when I bring people into an Eventbrite or session, and many of you have signed up on Eventbrite, this is what I would encourage you to do. Use Eventbrite just to kind of get it started, get out there, put a few dollars in promotion behind it, but get started now. Don't wait until it's perfect. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. Trust and know. I put a lot of work into my presentations, but some of the presentations just don't land. Okay, great. Do I need to do it differently? Do I need to do something better? Do I need to do something related to, do I need to change the headline? Do I need to change the I don't know. Do I need to change the headline? Do I need to change the tagline? Do I need to change something in my marketing? What is not resonating with these people? Do I need to change the video, the promotional video, the VSL, the video sales letter, something? But this is where you just got to get out there and you just have to try it. So about creating the presentation, when you are creating the presentation, this is important because you have to be prepared for the delivery. And in creating that presentation, you're going to be creating that offer. You're going to deliver massive amounts of value. And I want you to use story. We're going to talk about that here in a second. And you're also going to use seeding, SEEDING. Okay. So, and when creating the presentation and creating the offer, again, I want you to consider the 15 reasons why people buy. I also want you to match the offer to the length of the presentation. So if someone is coming to you for 45 minutes, unless you have a really warm audience who knows who you are, what you're all about, you're probably not going to sell them a high ticket item. And high ticket is in the mind of the beholder, right? Or is in the eye of the beholder. So that is in their mind. So you could say, well, high ticket to my people is $99. Some people, high ticket is $500. For me, high ticket is anything over $25,000. So I'm just saying, If you're bringing people into a 45-minute conversation and they've never met you before, you've got to be really careful about asking for too much too soon. Otherwise, your sales are just going to be terrible. Or you're going to be doing a lot of them in order to get any sort of real traction. So if you're bringing someone into an hour-long or 45-minute-long presentation, and you're asking for $50,000, unless you have a really warm audience, I doubt that it's going to work. I doubt that it's going to convert. So again, I'm careful with the numbers that I'm going to throw out there, because I've seen people really paint themselves into a corner and say, well, I had an hour-long thing and I was able to sell, $100,000 worth of things. That's great. Was it to a warmer audience? Or maybe they just had such a compelling offer that they were able to do that. I'm just saying, you have to match the offer to the length of time that they're spending with you, so you have that ability to generate trust and create trust. But you also want to match the offer to the content. This is why you create the offer first. Because if you create the offer at the end of the content and you're a little bit off in the content, and you're not driving it back to, like, they're going to well, how does that offer make any sense for this? Like, if you talked, let's say for argument's sake, again, I talk all about 4 core functions of business: lead gen, sales, operations, and accounting. So here we're talking about all about selling. And at the end of my offer, let's say I have an accounting or finance offer. You'd be like on Saturday, for example, I have a financial, a money and finance boot camp for business owners. If I started talking about money and finance boot camp for business owners, and everything today we're talking about selling to a crowd, you'd be like, what does that have to do with selling to a crowd? That doesn't have anything to do with this, right? It wouldn't make sense. Guess what? I'm not mentioning it. I'm not mentioning it at the end. That's why the offer at the end that I'm going to have today is not going to match what I have on Saturday. Okay, so this is why you have to start thinking about this in advance. So when you're creating the actual offer, when you're creating that offer, you want to deliver massive value up front, because again, the market judges you by what you give away for free. The market judges you by what content you're allowing them to sample. If you were say, well, once you sign up, then I'll show you the real good stuff. Man, people are just too like, they don't trust very quickly like they used to. And because they have so many different options. So when you're looking at this and you're talking about delivering massive value, again, I'm just telling you, you can do it if you want, but do not do the showing me what to do, but not how to do it. That is, I've done a little bit of that today, but I've shown you like some constructs that you can take and start formulating presentations that'll be in alignment with a specific offer. I can't create an offer because I have no idea what kind of offers that you have. But when you create the offers, I've given you the construct around the 15 reasons why people buy. And you're like, yo, okay, I don't really have my core purpose figured out, but I'm getting closer. I don't have my ideal avatar dialed in at all. But once I get those 2 things, then I can do this other thing. Make sense? So once you have those put together, then you can be much more effective in your selling. But again, your job is to create trust with the individual. And creating trust, again, you can do that by demonstrating competence, demonstrating you know what you're talking about, but also be a decent human. Don't come up there and drop F-bombs and all that sort of thing. And man, if that's your speaking style normally, I don't know. I think they think that they're going to bond or connect with the audience better. I don't know. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's right. It's not right for me. I'm not saying that I don't swear, right? Like, if we're in a one-on-one conversation and I'm going to match the conversation, trust to know I'm a Marine. I know how to swear, but I'm just saying, I don't think it's ever appropriate from stage. And I've seen some pretty big names do it. I don't know. I think it's bad form. I don't agree with it again, but you can do what you want. You think is best for you. So, but again, your job is to create trust with those individuals. And again, maybe if you're people, they all swear and that's normal for them. Fine, if you're selling, but even truck drivers have, they like people like, oh, I swear like a truck driver. I'm like, I don't know. I hear a lot of truck drivers that don't really always talk that way. So again, selling from stage is just different. And again, remember, the fastest way to create trust is to demonstrate competence. Demonstrate with them that you know what you're talking about. Demonstrate with them that you have failed at this. And my sales were horrific from stage before, until I realized what I was doing wrong. And there were so many individual little nuanced things that I was doing poorly that it wasn't about the ums or the ahs. That's not really I mean, that can get to be a little annoying where it gets very distracting. There was a person who's a good friend of mine. I don't think they realized how often they were saying, you know. I was doing that, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm doing the same thing. And all you could hear from that person was, or okay. And I had to break myself of that habit. And every now and again, when I get tired and I'm trying to do a presentation, that'll sneak back in. So you have to keep in mind of that. But again, it's about creating trust and demonstrating competence. Demonstrate with them that you know what you're talking about, and show them. And don't be afraid to give them some social proof. So beyond creating the offer and delivering massive value, use story as much as you possibly can, and put yourself in the story. But the thing that's nice about story is it transports people. It makes you very relatable. And it also, when you share testimonials or case studies, you can use story in a very tangible way, which really connects people to your story or where you're at. And that's the nice thing when you're sharing testimonials or case studies, like these people right here. Like these are a very real world couple, and this is actually taken from many years ago. They actually look a lot different now because they're older. Okay. But when I start to talk about them and Brian and Kara Keepers, when I talk about them and their journey, when they've got 3 kids, he owns a series of coffee shops. She has actually gone part-time to her work because that was part of her personal vision. And we worked on that, and I have worked with them as their strategist for, I think, about 7 years now. And they live a very good life. And all of that has been by design. So when I start to tell that story, and I start to tell the story of them having 3 kids, and I start to tell them a story about where he had these series of coffee shops that he opened and is working on it on his own. And he's got this lifestyle that he wants where they get to travel, and they get to travel with their kids a lot. And she has been able to go to part-time. And the only reason she's even working part-time is because she really enjoys it. She enjoys what she does. She's a dental hygienist. So this is what I'm saying. Like, this is where you start to recognize and bring stories or testimonials, bring story when you're relating testimonials or case studies. And you can also share using the 3T format. The 3T story format is really, this is something that I use because I've seen all these different story formats being taught. And like my mentor, he taught me I don't even remember. I had it posted. It's 7 steps. And I was like, oh my gosh, dude, I'm never going to remember these. And it just, every time I would get hung up in the story, I'm like, okay, I would get lost where I was. I was like, I need something easy to remember. So this is really easy for me to remember. Title, triggering event, transformation. So the title is who you were at the time. When I was a little boy, ... I was a little boy. That was my title. When I was a little boy growing up, we did, my father was ... Right? So I'm telling you the backstory. When I was a little boy, I was this. When I was a little girl, I was this. When I was in business 10 years ago, I was this. That's the title. That gives the story a pre-frame. Now people can go, oh, okay. So again, this is also important for you to understand your avatar, because if you say, well, back when I was a billionaire and, now I'm a multi-billionaire, people are like, I can't relate to that individual. So you have to recognize that the title probably needs to be something that they can relate to in some way. Or maybe the whole point is the triggering event taught them a lesson. And the triggering event is what happened. So when I was a little boy, I got really upset with my father because he wouldn't buy me a toy. So I left, I walked out of the store, and I started walking home. And I was 7 years old. And I remember this is actually a true story. I remember leaving there, and it was dark, like really dark. And it was like 7 o'clock at night, and I was walking home, and I walked all the way out of town until the lights were no longer on. And I realized, what did I do? I was pretty upset. Well, I walked a ways. Like, I must have walked for probably half an hour. And again, I was only this tall. But the thing was, I walked all the way out of town, and then they came and picked me up. And by the time I was bawling because it's 7, I was like super scared because I hear all these, these things in the woods that are going to come get me. And they probably were behind me the whole time, like, crawling up behind me. But I was mad. I was like pretty pissed. But anyway, the whole triggering event was what happened. I was so mad and I left. And then transformation, I got really scared and realized, oh my gosh, what did I do? I should have stayed in the car. And it transformed me to realize that I had made a big mistake. That transformation was that revelation that I had made an error. That was my new state. That's a teachable moment. So this is really important during that format. This I can remember. The title, the triggering event, the transformation. This is who I was. The triggering event is, and then this happened. And I did this, and then this happened, and then I realized ... That's the revelation. That's the teachable moment. So that is a really good framework for you to use when you are using that in your presentations. So using story. And the last one is seeding. Seeding is really, really important. And you utilize something using the contrast principle. So when the contrast principle is something where you're telling people what to expect in advance, but it's not more than that. So the contrast principle is like when there's a really funny story of a college student who's a young college girl, and she writes a letter home and says, "Dear Dad, dear Mom and Dad, I want to let you know things are going great at college. We had a little bit of a fire here at the apartment, but everybody's good. We're safe. It's no big deal. But fortunately, my boyfriend was able to put out the flames. Oh, by the way, I have a boyfriend now, and he's living with me. He dropped out of college 5 years ago. Yeah, he's 27, but he's working at a bouncer in a bar that I met him at. You're gonna really love his neck tattoos, and he's a really nice guy. And we had a little pregnancy scare there for a minute, but we're good now. And by the way, none of this is true. I just got a D in English. I hope you're well." Okay, that's perfect use of the contrast principle. And that is to say, hey, it could have been so much worse, but really only got a D in English. So the contrast principle is to say, hey, look, because the mind has trouble with negation, you want to use the contrast principle well. And you could say, hey, look, for a lot of times from what people will purchase, usually it could be, $2,000 to $3,000, but fortunately you're not going to pay $2,000 or $3,000. Because the mind has trouble with negation, whatever you say is what they remember. Again, think about what's the worst thing that you could say to a kid going up to bat. Don't strike out. That's the worst thing you could say to a kid. The best thing you could say is knock it out of the park. That's why, because the mind has trouble with negation, that's how the contrast principle works. And that's how seeding works. So when you're seeding along the way. Again, I can't give a lot more examples along the way, but you're going to do this in sort of seeding along the way. Like, hey, this could take 20 hours for you to do on your own, or with, an hour and a half worth of training with me. Something along those lines if you have coaching. But whatever it is, so you want to basically increase their desire, or you want to address the likelihood of achievement, but you also want to reduce the amount of time and reduce the amount of effort it's going to take for them during this whole thing. Make sense? So that's how the contrast principle can work. You also use the seeding to help manage expectations. So when you're managing their expectations, again, this is where you're going to say, hey, look, realistically, if you don't have 10 hours to put this in, probably not the best thing for you to do. If you don't have the ability to control your calendar to do this sort of training, probably best for you not to step into this. So it's a great way for you to use seeding there as well to help manage expectations. So it's another thing. It's also, I want you to remember reciprocity when you are offering them lots of value, lots of things of value, and they would expect lots of things of value in your return. And now you're going to present your offer in a value stack. So we talked about the value stack, and this is when you're delivering the presentation. So again, we're about remembering reciprocity. You're going to offer them the thing in a value stack, the offer in a value stack, and then crystal clear call to action. So let's talk about the value stack, and then we're going to, once we're done with delivering the presentation, we're going to get into we'll put the fries in the bag. The value stack is where you're divorcing price from value. So when you're divorcing price from value, the value should massively exceed the price by at least 10 times. So if you're going to say, hey, look, this is probably worth about $20,000 in real tangible value, because I've seen people turn this into $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of value, then your price should probably be somewhere around $2,000. Make sense? So that's what I'm saying. The value should massively exceed the price, but you cannot connect price and value. They must be different things. So when you're looking at the value stack, let's say that you have thing one valued at 4,000. Remember, we're talking about the offer, which is the universe of everything that you have together. So thing one is valued at 4,000, thing two is valued at 6,000, thing three is valued at 8,000. You have a bonus at 10,000. The total value is 28,000. So when you bring this together with the price, right? You're putting the thing, hey, you got this at 4,000, this at 6,000, this at 8,000, and this at 10,000. Total value is at 28,000. Today's price is 1997. So when you're putting this up there, again, I just want to make this quick point. I know we're running a little long, but here's the quick point. When you talk about thing one, hey, here's thing one. We're going to sell it for $4,000. Let me tell you about thing two. Thing two is thing at 6,000, okay? Before I go on to thing three, I'm going to revisit thing one and then remind them the value of thing one. Then I'm going to remind them of the value of the thing two. Then I bring up the value of thing three. Because people will only tend to remember the last thing that you remembered or the last thing that you told them. So that is how you bring about and put in together a value stack. So the total value is 28,000. Again, when I talk about the bonus at the very end, I'll revisit very quickly thing one, thing two, thing three. Then I talk about the bonus, total value, today's price. So that is how you deliver a value stack. Now, you should also include a guarantee. The longer, the better. In my 90-day program, I give everybody a 90-day money-back guarantee. You get to the end of the 90 days and you hate it and you don't think it was worth 10 times the value, I'll give you your money back. I don't have any interest in keeping your money if you don't think it was worth it. Yeah, why would I? That's kind of creepy. So that's about creating the offer in a value stack. Now the main thing is at the very end is you have to have a very, 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 very clear call to action. Tell them specifically what they need to do. Click this link. Go to the back of the room. See Jen back there? Jen, wave your hand. Go back there and see Jen right now. Like literally, who's interested? If you're interested, go back there right now. Like, don't wait. Do it right now. I'll wait for you. Okay? And then you need to let them know why they need to do it and why they need to do it right now. Because if they don't give them a compelling reason to do it, they're going to think about it. Look, you're going to delay, and here's what's going to the reality is if you know that this thing can help you and you delaying it, that's just telling you that you're afraid. This is where you need to confront your fears. And this is why you need to take action now, because action cures fear. So that's the biggest thing. And the key points to this is you don't need to convince them to buy. You don't need to do any of that. You just need to make sure that once you have their information, even if they don't buy right then, that you follow up, you follow through with them, and you make sure that you follow them and keep giving and delivering value, even if they don't buy from you. So that's everything that I have today. Thanks for sticking around. I had no drop-offs today. That was pretty interesting. I had a couple people drop off in the very, very beginning, but everybody else stuck around. So thanks for sticking around. If you are looking for more trainings like this, you go to Eventbrite and just follow me for more events. I've got some coming up the rest of this week and some for next week. I do, like I mentioned, I have a money and finance boot camp for business owners on Saturday. But again, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. But if you're interested in that, but the one thing I do want to talk about is the school community. If you are interested in group sessions, group trainings, or even one-to-one trainings with me, I want you to check this out. Go there right now and check this out, where you can get into, hold on one second. I've got all sorts of windows open here. I've got way too many windows open on my computer. Does anybody else have that problem? But if you go to school.com, I've got a couple of different sessions that you can sign up for. And if you guys have any questions, you can type them in right now. Otherwise, if you are interested, what this includes, there is group trainings. There are all sorts of different classroom sessions that you will have access to, and an entire 90-day program that if you get to the end of the 90 days inside the school community, it's not quite live yet, but it'll be live probably in the next couple of days. You will have complete access to everything and all of those sessions in there for as long as you want, as long as you're a member of the community. Different things in there that you can sign up for. So I don't have any questions with anybody here. So if you are interested in signing up and you have any questions for me, you can get signed up in there and go ahead and message me and ask me any questions. Otherwise, thanks so much for sticking around, guys, and I'll see you guys in the boardroom. Take good care.